Hey gang, this is Mike with my Real Estate Dojo. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about why land is a bad investment. Wait up, before you guys start slandering me and say, no Mike, land is a great investment, I'm going to explain to you why for me and many new investors and even pro investors, why land, raw land is a bad investment, okay? Let's go ahead and dive in and get started. The very first thing is that with land, now, before I go into this video, I'm going to talk about why it's a bad investment, and at the end, the second part, I'm going to talk about things you can do to make a land a good investment if you decide to do that. All right. Now, some people, if I dive into it, they have systems already in place for raw land, which means that they're going to make money, so it's a great investment for them. Some people have significant amount of money and they need to take some type of loss, and so they do it through land. Okay. But for most investors, new investors, beginner investors, people that have cash, there's other vessels or assets you can put your money into that's more safer, less riskier, less liability, and takes less management, like gold and other things out there, that if you're just going to dump it into land. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. The very first thing that I don't like about land that is no cash flow. Now, some of you guys say, well, Mike, I could put a, RV park on there. I could put, a trailer park on there, and we'll get into that. But for majority of people that buy land, there's two types of people that buy land. There's the people that buy land in the city, like lots, and then there's the people that buy land in the boondocks, way away from the city, okay? And they'll buy acres, etc. Both of them, you don't have a cash flow unless you add a business system on top of it, like an RV park. And I'll talk about that the second part. But most people that buy a piece of land, they're buying it in anticipation of appreciation. So they're in other words, they're buying it now in hopes that later on it's going to grow and the price value is going to go up. Okay? So there's no monthly cash flow. Now, let's say if I was going to have $10,000 and I was going to buy a piece of land, I wouldn't get any monthly cash flow from it. But with the same $10,000, I could do, let's say, a creative financing deal, like a master lease, like a subject to, where I just take over the existing mortgage or the existing loan. To give you two examples, with my same $10,000, I could buy a property subject to, let's say the rent is $1,000, and I rent it out for $1,300 a month, and I'll have a positive cash flow of $300. That's after me paying PITI, which is principal, interest, tax, and insurance. So the remaining $300 comes to me. Now I have to use some of that money for vacancies. I have to use some of that money for AC repairs, etc., and property management, unless I manage it myself, what have you. But you get a positive cash flow, okay? And then you're covering all the other expenses like insurance, taxes, and so on, okay? Now, number two reason I personally don't buy land, all right, is that you got to pay, right? So you got to pay money in taxes, all right? So let's say I buy an acre in BFE. Every year I got to pay taxes. So instead of me buying $10,000 where it gives me money, cash flow, now I have to give it money every year, okay? So I got to pay taxes on this property. And if this property is not producing me any cash flow, like most people that think about, hey, I'm going to buy a piece of land, I'm just going to wait for it to appreciate, well, it's not going to give you cash flow with that mindset, with that strategy, okay? All right, so I have to pay taxes on it. So it's taking money out of my pocket. So I put 10 grand in, and now I got to pay every year, okay? Now there's things you can do to reduce your taxes if you are in the boondocks, like, get farm animals and have less taxes, but it doesn't matter. If you have to pay $1,000, or if you have to pay $300, or if you have to pay $3,000, you still have to pay, right? The goal is to invest your money into things that gives you money. Like, for example, some stocks have dividends that they give you money, okay? You could buy a rental property with the same $10,000 using creative real estate investment strategy. Now, some of you guys say, well, how do I learn about the creative real estate investment strategies? Don't worry, guys, I got you covered. I have my Mother course. It has 171 chapters. It talks about strategies like subject to, master leases, rent to owns, so on. It talks about how to find the sellers, marketing, talks about negotiate, so much stuff. And you guys can get it on my website at My Real Estate Dojo, and I'm having a sell on it. So going back to the story, why I don't buy investment properties is there's no cash flow for me unless I put a business system on it, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I gotta pay every month taxes. And then the other thing is I have to get insurance. So it's a big liability. Guys, as you know, I can't spell, but I'm still doing this, right? I'm trying to change you guys' lives without being able to spell. So big, actually it's a BOG, liabilities. All right? So that's why I had to share this, to start where you stand it. So some of you guys want to do real estate investing, but you don't have all the strategies. Forget about it. Start where you stand, right? You know, I want to be a public speaker. I can't spell, I can't speak, but I'm starting where I stand. And I hope that's a good point, that I want to show you guys that my disabilities and my vulnerabilities, and put it out there and say, look, I'm working on being my dreams. And I want to help you work on being your dreams, okay? And the first thing you got to do, you got to start where you stand. So coming to this, it brings big liabilities, okay? Which means now I have to buy insurance. Now, I'm not buying insurance to cover my property damage, like if the hail comes, because I have nothing on it besides it's raw land. But I do now need to buy liability insurance. Some guys out there on my acre of land, he hurts himself, there's a good chance that he could come sue me, right? I didn't fence it up correctly or whatever. So this is America. In America, there's a lot of fake lawsuits, okay? I've been a victim of a couple of them myself. If you hear Mark Cuban, he's been a victim of it. So in America, there's a lot of lawyers, there's a lot of deadbeat people that don't want to work for money. They have all this debt from going to law school, or, you know, they're just lazy and they just want to come up real fast. And so they're going to target people that had assets. And real estate is a good asset to target because it's not liquidable like Bitcoins. I can sell my Bitcoins in a click of a button. Real estate, it's going to take 30 days plus, depends on the price of the property, how quick the title company is, how quick the inspector is, how, etc. Okay, so I have to buy insurance. Now that's going to cost me money. Now I have two things that's costing me money every month. So let's say I put two situations. You know, one I buy land, and the other one, let's say I use a creative real estate financing. Both I put 10K. Now I got to pay taxes on this year, so I got to go negative taxes. Money, okay? I got to go negative insurance a month, all right? That costs me money. Where on this property, what I bought is subject to you for $1,000, you know, a month, and I'm renting out for $1,300. My $1,000 already. All right, my $1,000 already includes the PITI. Okay, so the remaining is $300. So that's already covered. This one's already covered. Now I'm getting a positive $300 after covering my insurance and taxes, guys, okay? Now, let's go to step number 4, which is liability, okay? Now, if you have, let's say, 100 acres, or if you have a lot of land, then you're gonna be a highly risk target for lawsuits. That's why you have to get this insurance, okay? Which is going to cost you money, okay? Now, there's other stuff in there, like you have opportunity lost. You lost money because you put $10,000 on a piece of land and you thought that in 5 years it's going to go up. It may go up, right? But it may not go up, okay? The other thing is that on land, there's always like deed restrictions. I've seen so many investors that bought some land in the middle of nowhere, and they thought that they could go park their RV out there and camp out, or they thought they could go camp out. And then there's deed restrictions that says, hey, you can't camp out here, okay? Or they thought that, you know, they could just build a tiny home on the property, and then later on they found out they couldn't because there's deed restrictions on there, okay? So now, these are a couple of reasons why I don't invest in land. Now, if you have a lot of money, right, or if you know like insider information, then, you know, what do I mean by insider information, okay? So as we talked about, there's like 2 types of lands you can buy. So this is your bubble, like your concrete bubble. Let's say this is Dallas, okay? And, you know, there's a bunch of houses here, and then there might be a slot of home. There's deals like this you can buy here inside the property, like a lot. And then there's the bubble of concrete. Let's say this is Dallas. And then there's all this BFE, right? Buttfuck Egypt is so far, and you're buying land out here, okay? This is the basically two types of ways you can buy land. Now, many people buy land over here, and they're hoping that the price is going to go up. Sorry, guys. There's somebody calling in. All right, so many people buy property out here, land out here, and they think the property is going to go up, and maybe the property will go up. Okay, I think that's a better deal than when I drive around in town and I see, like, say, an old development in Irving or something, and there's all these homes, and then there's a lot here, and it's been 30 years that the developer's been here, and no one's bought this land. Somebody else buys this land for $250 or $2,000, and I'm so happy. I'm thinking, what are you going to do with this land? Okay, it's not like you can put a 7-Eleven in there. It's not like you can rent it out, and put storage out there because the city's not going to allow. So you just bought a dead deal. Okay, unless you're going to develop it yourself, it doesn't make sense because all the homes in the area are like from the 1950s or something, and you're going to put a new home on it. Now that makes sense in downtown Dallas, but not in the suburbs of the Dallas area, okay? So I don't like land. Now, let's talk about some things that you can make money off of land, okay? That if you did own land, all right, you can make money off of. Number one is that if this was the city and you bought some land here, and let's say there was a major highway going on, and you were going to the council, city meetings, and you kind of knew that they were going to build this way in the next 30 days or 3 years, then that make sense, okay? All right. But the very first way to make money off land is by having a business system on there. Okay. Now, what do I mean? Let's talk about some of this stuff, okay? The very first thing you could put up on a piece of land is you could do storage. Okay? Like you can have people store their cars, you can have people store their boats, you can have people store ATVs, things that they can't have. And this something like this it's not going to cost you any money in a sense because you might not even have to fence it up. Okay? You might not have to fence it up. You may want to, you can charge more, but you don't even have to do that. You don't have to put any structure. You just say, okay, this is my piece of land. Some people don't have any room in the city, and then you just drive out there and, they're only getting their boat once a month and it's on the way to the lake. So you use it as a storage facility and start making some monthly cash flow from it. So that's a decent way, okay? And another thing you can do is you can set up like mobile homes. Okay. Mobile homes can go into anything to where you could develop things like communities like tiny homes. And these are pretty hot, okay? Where a lot of people have, big homes and they're tired of it, or the mortgage or the debt, and they just want to settle down into something very, very small, like 500 square foot. And you can set up a community of that, okay? Or you can set up, RV parks, okay? And you've seen that, so you have a piece of land that's not bringing any monthly cash flow. Maybe you could run some water, you could run some electricity, and then rent it out $10-20 a night, what have you. Okay. Other things you can do is, I thought about this, is setting up, EV chargers. Okay, for all this new infrastructure is going to come in as more people adopt EV cars. And like if you're, let's say this is Dallas and this is Houston, or you're a far town in between, you buy some farmlands, it's close to the highway, you can have people charge and pay you $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, if you have no other idea, okay? Other things you can do on it is, turn it into a park. And one park that I always use is ATV parks. Okay, I used to go out there on my ATV, pay $50 to enter the park, and then pay $10 per ATV that we had. So it would cost me a couple $100 to go in there, okay? So that person was making a lot of money. Hundreds of people would come in there for all the holidays, all the weekends, and they had, 50 to 100 acres of land, okay? So turn it into ATV parks. So if you implement one of these business systems on top of the piece of land, then you can make profitable. But for me, as a refugee to America, if I don't implement a business system on top of a piece of land, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. It just doesn't make sense for me. Now, if I know some business owners that have very successful business, that making so much money, so they buy a piece of land to take a loss on it in a sense. But not for me. Okay. If I buy something, I need to get a return on my investment ASAP. I don't care that if the land is worth 100 and I can get it for 20, because for me to put my 20 grand there and wait 10, 20 years, it's not what I'm looking for. If I put my 20 grand in there, I want to get a return on my investment. If I put my 100 grand in there, I want to get a return on my investment today. I need it to work today. I can't have it work 100 years from now, okay? Now, rental properties, the reason I can hold it forever is because they're giving me money instantly, dude. As soon as I buy a property, it's giving me a cash flow. As soon as I buy it subject to property, it's giving me a cash flow. When I do a master lease, it's giving me cash flow instantly, okay? And I am buying at a deep discount or owner financing. Now, I'm not saying land is a very bad thing for most people, but I think for me and many new and medium level investors, it's a horrible thing. Let me give you an example. When I first started in real estate, I was getting on eBay and I was thinking, man, let me just buy some piece of land, because on eBay you go on there and they're selling you like acres in Arizona, in the desert, in Nevada for like $10,000. I was like, man, let me get it. I was studying it, and I was so glad that I didn't do it, because what the hell would I have done with that? I would spend 10 grand, I would have paused a piece of land in the middle of nowhere. Every year I gotta pay taxes on it, every year I gotta pay insurance on it, and what does it do for me? Nothing. And it doesn't even appreciate in value. Maybe the only appreciation it's gonna get is inflation. But unless it's somewhere that the city's gonna come through, or Tesla's gonna come out there, or some big factory's gonna be built on it, then it's probably not gonna go up in price like the way it does if I bought a rental house in the Boulder, Colorado. If I bought a rental house in Uptown Dallas. If I bought a rental house in Henderson, Las Vegas. Okay. So what am I trying to say is that real estate is a great business. Land can be a great investment, depends on your situation. But from all the students that I've taught and from my own situation, I don't fuck with land. I don't buy land. I don't mess around with it, because it's not something that's going to give me the best returns. I could use the same exact $10,000, let's say, to buy this piece of land. I can go and buy rental properties that are going to give me monthly cash flow, that I could refinance, that I could create new notes and do owner financing with. I could have all this advantages where I could get the tax write-offs. Because someone else is paying the mortgage on it. Okay, if I didn't do a subject to. So there's so many benefits to it that it overweighs for me to put my $10,000 in a piece of land and then wait 10, 20 years and hope that it's going to go up. And I know that's what most people think, that's going to go up, but it doesn't always go up. I've looked at a piece of land, that I was going to buy, let's say 12 years ago, and still it's like maybe going up like $500 because it's the middle of nowhere, dude. Okay. So if you guys have any questions regarding real estate, I'm here for you guys. Just leave a comment below if it's on Facebook, if it's on YouTube. If you took valuable information from this, click on the like button and share and leave a comment. Thank you guys.